Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Collision Live. It's me, Daniel, your host, joined at the desk, as I always am, by the pumpkin spice to my literally everything on the menu for the next 2 months, Samuel David Camp. What is up?
It is the season, and I'm here for the pumpkin spice. We change our I make pancakes every Saturday. Little something about me. And when fall hits, we switch regular pancakes to pumpkin spice chocolate chip pancakes, and they are the bomb.
See, for my family, I put the Eggos in, and then it's like, hey, pick your topping. Do you want like some marshmallows or some chocolate syrup? Or,
Yeah.
So we do it right. But hey, guys, we're excited to have you guys join us. This is going to be a little bit of a different Collision Live episode than normal. For one,
We're not live.
we're not live. This is the Collision not live. So we're all at this moment. We're in different parts of the country. We're on vacations. We're just not around. So we're pre-recording this, projecting into the future, and kind of because of that, because again we're recording shortly after we did our last live stream. So we're not up on like the news or anything that breaks the craziness that I'm sure will happen.
So rather than telling you about something that happened when you're watching this last week and completely ignoring whatever just happened.
Yeah, here's all the outdated cultural stuff. We thought we'd just sort of do a kind of a more laid back, less structured, just sort of conversation about kind of broad picture about culture, the things we see going on. To talk and those that will be joining us in this conversation, we have our crew back, and we have our full crew back. If you guys watched last week, the curious case of the missing Stephen,
He has been found.
He has been found. The authorities have been notified. He was alive. But how are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Well, almost well rested, but haven't caught up yet. So
Yeah. So why don't you explain to the good people watching why you were why you weren't here last week?
well, yeah. Okay, so we took an RV trip. I have friends in Nevada who own an RV, and long story short, they let us borrow it, which we were very thankful for.
Nice.
So we actually took a massive loop around Grand Canyon, up to Bryce Canyon, Zion, and down to Valley of Fire it was. And I have a couple pictures of something we did.
Show and
Stephen,
tell.
sure. I was about to say that.
I love it.
There we go. So we actually rode horses into the canyon, which was pretty cool. 3 hours of killing my knees, basically. But
Nice.
got the epic picture of my mom just going around the corner.
That's cool.
And so it was pretty cool. Had to throw in the selfie from Zion.
Yep.
But I think the coolest thing was, just being able to camp in those spots. I don't know. It was just cool. I've never been to some of those areas, so that's where we were, just kind of exploring the West.
It's pretty remarkable. The West is one of my favorite areas of the country. Because it's just so radically different than.
And it's
out
weird
here.
how it's different from here, but at the same time, every canyon we went to was something completely different. So it was like still different from each other. So I don't know. It was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the next part of that story that he didn't share is that the return trip, the red eye, Stephen was he was getting his Z's, his sleep during our live stream, but Joni picked up the slack for him. We're glad to have the full crew back. So why don't we kind of just jump into this? I thought kind of. It's sort of in general the stuff that I think we see going on in culture. Again, although we are not live, I encourage you, if you guys are watching, share some of your thoughts in the comments. We can respond to those. Maybe even we'll be watching this live from the beach somewhere or on our vacations. Or
Unlikely, but we might be.
Yeah, maybe Joni, while she's riding like It's a Small World at Disneyland, she can be responding to stuff. But hey, we would love to have a conversation with you guys about some of these things. In fact, maybe just to kick it off, a lot of times, especially as Christians, when we think of culture, we can do it kind of in like a negative, like, what bad happened in culture this week? And what are we mad about? How is this company, corrupting our children or all that? And I don't know, for me, I love culture. I know there's stuff to navigate and deal with, but I think there's a lot of good stuff in culture. I love the arts.
Yeah.
I love film, love books, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's healthy to sort of appreciate things that are good. So kind of our first question, we can all maybe pitch in, or if we have anything, is sort of like what excites you or what excites us in culture right now, whether that's like a trend or a thing that you just enjoy. But what about you, Sam? What are you excited about?
Well, probably the thing I'm most excited about is going to be the Rings of Power. That's been super fun. We've been watching that every weekend and going through that, and that's been pretty good.
Is your wife, my sister, for those that don't know our relation, while we're always like going on vacation together and stuff,
Because we love each other.
Yeah, is she enjoying the show? Because I know she's not like a hardcore.
Yeah, I think she finds it fine. She's probably only watching it because I want to. But and she did have one criticism of it, which I would probably agree with, is there's just a lot going on. Like there's like 8 different like storylines, and I think to maybe the average viewer, like it can kind of seem a bit overwhelming to like wait, so who's this person again, and like how do they connect? And sometimes it's not clear that they will connect, but you assume they will.
Yeah.
So there's just sort of like there's all these moving parts.
It's a ton of stuff. I mean, we're recording this. We've only seen the first 3 episodes. When this airs, the 4th episode will have come out, and I totally get that. Like, it's definitely, and someone that's like a nerd and like the lore, I appreciate seeing these things. Like I know, because I know some of like the mythology and stuff. Like I know where that will lead, and that's exciting. But I do feel like 3 episodes in, like it is testing the bounds of like, we need things to kind of happen. Like I enjoy the world building. I get why we're sort of introducing a new place each time, and like
and because of the source material, like there's just so much groundwork that has to happen. I think it can be a little bit like, all right, is there what's the payoff for all this? And
yeah, definitely will have to pay off. I hope it does, and I think it will pay off more having set this all up. But I do think it is going to test people's patience a bit to like. Especially people that are like used to the movies.
Yeah. What about you? What are your?
Well,
aside from that,
besides
probably.
Rings of Power, which would be one of my things. I'm excited. They announced as of this recording, they announced this yesterday. The new Legend of Zelda. I'm rocking my my Zelda T-shirt. So I'm not like a hardcore gamer by any means. Like I dabble. I play a bit in the evenings when I'm tired, but I'm not like a super invested kind of gamer. But the Zelda games are like absolutely my favorite kind of games.
And so why, as someone who's like I know Zelda, but I don't know that I've really ever actually played Zelda. And maybe that's apocryphal, or it's grounds for excommunication.
Half-Life, a cursed life.
What's the pull of Zelda? Like what's the pitch?
Especially the last one, which is maybe arguably the greatest game ever made. Is this like massive open world, like sort of exploring, and like there's not a whole lot of like dialogue or things. Like it's it's not like one of those where you just sort of get lost in some of these like massive online kind of games. But like this sort of freedom to like spend your time in this like very detailed world, and like again as someone that loves that sort of fantasy stuff, it's like we can like see in the distance that there's like some mountain or there's something.
Yeah, so you can just
if you sort of work your way there, you can explore there. And again, I started playing the last game of this came out right when I had kind of younger kids. Like we sort of bonded over Zelda.
Yeah. So
we've been counting down the days. So they just announced we've known the game was coming, but they did like the title reveal and all that kind of stuff. And what about our crew? Is there anything that you guys are particularly excited about in culture, besides the fact that it gives you an opportunity to hang out with me and Steven or me and Sam and talk about this stuff every week? Anything that you guys are enjoying or seeing going on?
Well, I know one thing. I mean, like, Disney announced a bunch of stuff coming out, and they got an Indiana Jones 5 that's about to come out next year, and I know the biggest thing was the happily ever after the fireworks show that they took away for the 50th anniversary that everyone was upset about. They're actually bringing it back. So Disney fans are kind of going crazy right now and excited, and live action, more Little Mermaid, I think. Still not sure how I feel about it, but I don't know. There's just fun movies coming out that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, especially the indie. I'm excited for the last one. Was disappointing, like the Indiana Jones 4. Not a good movie, so hopefully this sort of sends off my boy Harrison Ford in the right way. Speaking of Disney, Joni will be at Disney. She's probably at Disney as we are speaking. The future self is there. Is there anything that you're, besides just the fact that you get to go to Disneyland, like anything you're excited about, Joni, or you're watching or listening to? Or
Well, Disney is more like my childhood, so I expect that I'm going to be like myself, like 10 years younger while I'm there. But yeah,
Just basking in all the nostalgia.
Yep.
Very good.
Because have you ever been to Disneyland before?
No, this is gonna be my very first time.
I can't remember. You've been.
I
have you not been?
I have run a marathon through
that's true.
Disney Park. Did not stop and do any of the rides because it wasn't officially open yet. But we've done like Hollywood Studios and I think one other place. But no, I haven't done like, I don't think I've done like the official Disney
Yeah,
park.
like I haven't been forever. Again, if you guys don't know, I have two 7-year-old twin boys, and like Disney is like, like the price of going their future college tuition is what it costs to go to Disney. So we're trying to find like the perfect age for them to go and like make it worth it.
Yeah.
Do all the fun rides, so we're not like
the one time.
Yeah, not like on like the kiddie ride. Like I paid how much money to watch my kids go on like this teacup spinny ride or
That would definitely be my 3-year-old. It's like we would like get stuck at like some like slide or something, and it's like we have this whole entire Disney park, and all she wants to do is like the slide over and over again.
Yes. So I feel like my kids are close to being able to do like the fun, the big boy stuff. So maybe we'll do that soon. Maybe the other kind of our next question is like. Again, if you're watching live, let us know what you're excited about. I think it is good to just celebrate culture and stuff. And as Christians, I don't think we do that enough because we jump right to the next question of what are we kind of concerned about? What are we worried about? Obviously, we talk about kind of issues and stuff on this live stream every week and kind of dialogue with like the specifics, but maybe even like a bit more broad picture. Like when you sort of look at culture, like we're somewhat plugged in because we do it every week and we're here at the Collision. Like, what do you think? Do you see things that are like concerning or worry you or
I don't know that like worry is necessarily the right word, but I think something that is maybe generally concerning is maybe just the lack of involvement that the church has at large in culture and shaping culture. I think the church has sort of maybe prioritized critiquing or criticizing culture and has done a lot less of like, investing in culture, if you will. And, it tends to just, and we've talked about this a ton on the show, but like when the church wants to like invest in culture or get involved in culture, it's usually like the sub-genre of like church sort of Christianized whatever. That's sort of how they see their involvement in culture. It's like, well, we're going to make a Christian Hamilton.
Like culture.
Or just sort of, it's a movie that's like made specifically for like church members, sort of thing. And, and although I think those things have a place, but those aren't necessarily really impacting the culture at large. I think maybe with the notable exception of The Chosen, which I think is actually, that seems to be sort of able to kind of break through a bit sort of outside the church. But even that still is very much like, this is for the church.
Yeah, you're still like, this is the life of Jesus. This is
Yeah.
the Bible.
Yeah, I think only
thematic.
maybe just because it's been done really well, and I don't know. It just seems to, like that has gotten a lot of attention, but in general, you're just not seeing sort of just at scale the church really being involved in culture, and I think that's really too bad, because I think that the church has a lot to offer, and I think Christians have a lot to offer, in telling stories and world building and all these different things that, there's this sort of this separation that I think sort of persists.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of like sort of like, why is that? Like why? And maybe some of it is just like like it's like our mindset of like, people always say, if you don't like it, just go make your own films or whatever. And like obviously that's like I hope as the church we're raising up creatives to make films and to like,
Yeah.
but I guess not. I guess it's not that simple to like, you don't like Hollywood, or just Christians go make Hollywood budgeted movie. Like it's it's hard as like a non-Christian to to make these sort of movies. And like, so I think maybe sometimes it's like this like helplessness of like, we can't really, no matter what we do, like, we're limited. Like, so, but even just like the engagement part, like I think like, obviously you raise up creatives, tell stories and make music and the arts and be involved. But like, I think even just like kind of like what we do at the Collision Live, like just be like present in the culture, like talk about it, like have conversations, enjoy it, kind of know what's out there, and like just sort of like be invested beyond just like it's out there and it's bad and we kind of stay away. Like,
Yeah, and I think sort of to that point, something that we try to do here is when we do talk about culture, if we talk about movies or shows or whatever, we try to go beyond like here are the bad things to look out for, here's why it's coming for your kids, and like stay away, or like this is another example of how broken Hollywood is. We I think have tried to point out like the positive things that like movies bring, like even if it's a movie that we don't agree with, on the whole, we can say, hey, this is a really interesting angle that they take on this, and go beyond sort of just the like, as a Christian, like what do I need to watch out for in this, but just to say, hey, they did a really good job, telling this story or this aspect of it, this theme, and so I think that's something that I think at large is maybe lacking, that we're trying to bring to sort of the critique of culture.
Yeah, and even just like learning from things, like hey, hey, maybe we don't like this thing, but like, what does this tell us about people? What does this like kind of help us understand people that we're called to reach and to talk to? What about our crew? I don't know if you guys have anything that's like worried, or maybe that's, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but like just things that you look out and you're like, I just don't know about this, or this as a Christian, this kind of concerns me, or is there anything that jumps out to either of you guys?
I guess the one thing, on the flip side of what you're talking about, of Christians and church being involved like in the culture, I feel like there's a lot of churches out there who have started to let culture shape them, in the sense of, I mean, you know me, I'm a worship person, so when I think about it, a lot of churches kind of mistake excellence for perfectionism, and that's, I feel like, a lot of Hollywood and all that is bringing in the everything has to be perfect and look good, or it's not good, basically. And so I feel like some churches, somebody told me the other day that somebody asked a question of when was the last time the Holy Spirit interrupted one of your services, and when's the last time that you let it, instead of things. I don't know. So I feel like it's not something I'm like super worried about, but it's like, I guess for churches and Christians to think about, not mistaking the excellence and perfection. Like, there's two different things, and we want to give our best. We want to do that. But when we let perfection distort our thinking of all that stuff, like, we've kind of lost sight of what the Holy Spirit's doing in a service and what we're doing. And I don't know. It's just something I think about. Just looking at, I guess everything's online now, and so it's a lot of, you have to do this to fit in and make it work, and I understand that, but at the same time, like, you just got to be careful and trying not to let the perfectionism of everything going on in culture and having to look a certain way determine our hearts, and we just want to share light, and I don't know, that's just something I think about.
Because that's even, I know me and Steven, or I keep calling you Steven. I'm looking at Steven and talking to Sam.
It's okay. I've been called
take
worse.
Take that as a compliment or an insult, depending on what you want to do. But I know we've talked about like this like traditions and stuff, and like I feel like kind of like what Steven's saying, like that there is sort of this temptation, or like this this danger, or whatever you want to call it, of the church trying to like just keep almost like I've heard like some like ministers and stuff almost frame it like they're competing against like we need to have this sort of real good production and stuff, because like look what else they can, almost like we need to like be as good as Netflix, or else people are going to choose Netflix, like as though we're competing on that level, which is a battle or whatever that like the church will never win. Like, you're not going to ever compete with that. Like obviously we don't have to. Like what we have is you don't get from like some lousy Netflix film. I know you traditions and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sort of ties in. Sort of, I think it has become a lot of church services. Maybe like the service part of it has become so sort of dialed in to become like this show, and maybe not necessarily in the best sense. Like again, I think it's good to have like you there's this maybe this just balancing between like good enough that like your mistakes aren't distracting, like if you're playing in the wrong key or missing notes or whatever, but not so good that it's it's almost more like a concert or a show, and it has to be this maybe there's the danger of being a too well-oiled machine, that you kind of miss the point of having a service. And I think to your point about, trying to, it seems like a lot of times these services will try and like, it feels like they're almost competing with other consumer products like Netflix, like Amazon or whatever. And so I think that the danger in that is that we won't ever, you're never going to put on a church service that matches the production value of something you can find on any of the streaming services, but you shouldn't have to. And I think we can, the danger is kind of getting lost in there. And I think coming back to traditions, it's the idea of sort of putting a stake down and saying like, we're going to do things this way, and we're not necessarily going to go and chase the latest, greatest, whatever it is, and not let that dictate sort of how we organize a service or that kind of stuff. Like it's okay to be like, update and, use good technology and all that kind of thing, but at the expense of sort of becoming unmoored from, why you're existing in the first place.
Because
I think
it's
it
almost
can be
like
dangerous.
something isn't necessarily like valuable just because it's old. Like just because this journey to Bahuda land or some old hymn or something like just because that's like old doesn't necessarily mean that like we need to only sing these very classic like obviously hymns were revolutionary at some point. We're not doing like polyphonic Gregorian chant or something like there is a sense to like almost being too tied to like but I think it sort of in large it just seems like there needs to be some kind of grounding thing that's not just like now this sort of style is popular or now the stage design like I think I can sometimes be critical even of like a lot of the stuff like on the stages of churches like some of the lights or things and sort of like what's the intentionality behind that beyond just sort of the trendy look and it looks cool and it's a kind of cool light like is there does it add to anything? Is there any purpose behind it? So I do think there is sort of a role for some of these like traditional things, even if it's not necessarily that we're still doing things like they did in the medieval times. Or what about you, John? I know we skipped over you. Maybe you're happy we skipped over you. I don't know if you have anything. Do you have anything concerning or thoughts or just things that you've wondered about? She's shaking her head. No, she's not concerned about anything. She's just excited to embrace it all. But maybe kind of maybe related to that a little bit, just sort of kind of thinking about culture. And I know like we kind of do it, almost have to do it because we're preparing for live streams and we're doing articles like this, the collision and stuff. Is this kind of thinking about stuff in culture, like things that we maybe not even like fully processed? Like, and I constantly have a bunch of thoughts or things that I was like, well, this is this thing that intrigues me, but I'm not really sure necessarily where I land or what to do with it. Like, have you just anything about culture that you've just sort of been pondering or just sort of wondering about? Or
maybe I don't know if it's culture necessarily, but even just the sort of the advancement of like filmmaking technology and sort of where is that going? I think like the Mandalorian, they use like I forget what they call it, like the envelope or the
volume.
The volume. I don't know why envelope. Just envelop. I don't know. But these really like amazing techniques for filmmaking and how that's just totally changed things. And I wonder too if that, is that going to be better for films in the future, or are we just going to get a lot like cheaper, techno savvy films that kind of forget about the storytelling? And so I don't know, like I'm just kind of curious to where that's going to go. I think there's been some really good things that they've done with that, but it's one of those things, this new technology, that I think people can love the technology so much that it kind of becomes a prequel. It's like the syndrome.
Yeah, it's like the George Lucas of like the. It's like, because we can do this, like, it's like, or like the Jurassic Park quote, we never thought if we should, just because we can. I don't know. Like, I feel like there is, I don't know if they're related, but like there is a sense of like just sort of weariness from the spectacle of like things that used to be like just mind blowing to see. Now there's so much of it, and like a lot of it's like digital, and like there's this. It's almost seems like there's like a lack of immersion, or just sort of like things that should just like if you were to show like 10-year-old me like some of these newer films and stuff like just blow my mind.
Yeah.
And now like some of these Marvel movies and things, it's just like, okay, like it doesn't look great. Like it,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like jaded from that. One of the things I've been kind of thinking about, and again, I don't know, I haven't like kind of parsed it all out to kind of figure out, but just sort of the kind of this like attitude of fear, like that I feel like so many of these, like, 'cause we talk about like specific cultural stuff as Christians and engagements, and like I just feel like so many of them at some point kind of like trace back to this like just fear, like that Christians have this sense of like we're fearful, whether we like would say in those terms, like we're just fearful of culture, like we're like I think a lot of like the reactionary outrage to stuff and like the Disney's coming for your kids kind of mindset, or like is this sort of this, I don't know, it's like this, we've put so much power on like entertainment and like or like back like the burning of the Harry Potter books or all those sort of things, like I don't know, it just seems like there's this sort of this fear of culture that like we're almost like this powerless against it, and like and even just like I think that's why so much of like the conversations about culture end up being like how do you navigate, how do you like how do you watch a movie and still keep your faith, as though like some like animated movies like be enough to totally shake your faith, and I don't know, like I feel like there is stuff to be aware of, and like it's not nothing, but what do you think, is there?
I mean, I think there's always been, I think throughout the church history, I think there's always been that sort of fear of the world, and trying to keep that like at arm's length. And I think part of it is maybe just a lack of equipping of the saints to like engage with the world in a way that's productive and helpful, and not coming out of a place of fear. But I think oftentimes, like kids that grow up in the church, like you just kind of learn to like, it's almost like there's this boogeyman, out there in the world that's, it's going to get you if you, watch these movies, or if you, aren't careful. And it's not to say that you just need to just go willy-nilly and go do whatever you want to, but I think can sometimes be this misplaced fear on sort of culture or Hollywood. And I think maybe it needs to be more directed at like, how do you actually engage with that and be strengthened in your own faith, so that it's, you're not elevating sort of the world so much that it's gonna like derail you, but you're also not minimizing, your own faith and what Christ has done in your own life, and so I think like trying to find that balance of not sort of overplaying, the hand.
Yeah,
that
it's
the
like
world
overplaying like the power of the world, and like kind of underplaying like the power of like the Holy Spirit in your life. Or,
Yeah.
like think of like the earlier, the early church and stuff that like withstood like the threat of death, and like thrown into like a pit of lions and stuff, and like they were courageous with it. And then you almost have us like today now. It's like, well, if you even see like a trailer for like the new Frozen movie or something, like that's going to be, we need to really guard against this. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I just feel like be aware, be kind of on top of things, but like as Christians, like we do have the power of the Holy Spirit, and like we don't need to be quite it. And I know like holiness and all that kind of stuff we need to be concerned about, but like we're not like the victory is won kind of. I think sometimes we forget that in the midst of like the kind of the war, kind of the warfare and culture and stuff. What about our crew? Is there anything that you guys have been? I know you guys have the joy of hearing us talk about cultural stuff every week. I'm sure we give you plenty to chew on at night and throughout the week. But anything you've sort of been thinking about as far as like culture, or just questions, or kind of navigating, or any of those sort of things?
I mean, I don't know specifically, but I mean, you were talking about that fear. I mean, that just got me thinking now. But I don't know. I don't know specifically any questions or anything. But do you have any?
What about you, Joni? Is anything this? Because you've been, how long? When did you join us here at the Collision? You've been here for over a year. Has it been over a year?
Over a year. I'm honestly, I'm not a talkative person, like a talking person. I enjoy listening more. So like.
Yeah. Well, hey, there is. I know that there is lots to process, and like that's one of the things I hope what we do here at the Collision is like I know we've said it before, like sort of our goal isn't always to like our show isn't like a show of answers as much as like of questions, like sort of like spark conversation. Like one of the things that I enjoy the most, having done the collision for however long we've been doing this, is like when like a radio show like picked up one of our articles or talks about it, or like you get people messaging and like just sort of thinking about stuff. Like, like I really don't care if I have a thick enough skin at this point to like. I don't really care if you disagree with me. Like, you know, you're wrong and you're free to be wrong. But I don't know. Like, I don't get bothered if someone like just totally takes the opposite approach. But I'm just sort of glad that I got someone thinking, or like we got thinking. I feel like there is, as Christians, maybe we don't do enough of that. Like we sort of want answers. Like we want kind of specifics, but kind of less openness just to like, hey, let's just talk about it. Don't need to land anywhere. Stephen,
Yeah, you were talking about that, and just I was in this past week in Nevada. The friend I have, they live in Las Vegas, well, outside Las Vegas, and you know Las Vegas there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I was telling her about the collision, and her and her husband, and their kids have been just kind of grown up there, but they've been just kind of washed over and just made sure they were doing. And I was just talking about what you guys did, and what I love is like you guys don't go and just bash culture. You go and how do we as Christians kind of just navigate through it? And how do we talk about it? And like you're saying, like how do you get people to think about it? And so them living in a culture that's very, very kind of engulfed in the world, just kind of gave them a perspective of they're probably going to be listening in too. But I just really like being a part of how you guys just navigate just through the world and through issues and things, and not speaking as if you're of the world, but like just going through it and saying, hey, this is how, as Christians, how can we work together to go through it? And I don't know, it just gets me excited for thinking about that and thinking about friends who live there, just being a part of the world and the culture they're in, and just, you know, it's just different. And so
and I think too, it's like a reminder that like life and like cultures is like messy. Like these questions are messy. Like the arguments are messy. Like, and like, at least for someone like me, I'm always drawn to that more than like I don't want like simplistic I want to just jump into the messy thing and just talk about it, whether I figure it out at all. And like I don't know, I enjoy, you know, like hopefully we still come to somewhat of like a conclusion, or like here's what we think we should do, but but just sort of this openness, and even for me, like a lot of the like the collision stuff, or just I think Christian engagement, like kind of comes back to like, you know, Adam and Eve, and like the call to like cultivate the earth, like, you know, have dominion over it, and like that sort of is still our call. And like obviously some of that's like picking weeds and like, you know, worrying about the bad stuff or fighting off you know, predators or whatever, but like at the base of it is just like caring for the earth, helping it become a beautiful place. And like, you know, I think sort of as we engage with culture and like our culture, we still some of those same like principles of just like, hey, let's just care for this, try to do what we can to make this better. But it's not just like you know, we live in some horrible dystopian wasteland. We just hate culture and like we have to be here. Like we're kind of called to more than that.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, maybe if anything, the church should be about making culture. And I think even if it's not like we're sending out people into Hollywood, which I think, you know, you can do that, but I think that the church itself should be contributing to a culture. And if the world around you is of a culture that you don't like, or you seem to be antagonistic towards, what can you do in that culture that can season it in a way that you would be proud to be a part of? And so how can the church start to build its own culture that influences the broader culture that it's you know, placed in? And so I think that's, you know, something that we try and do here. And you know, there's a dozen ways to do that. Like there is no like this is how you build culture. But I think for the church to be thinking about those things, and I think, you know, maybe lastly just to say that, you know, the church should be thinking, like that sort of goes without saying, but I think we have to say it these days, is that like I think our goal should be to actually think about some of these things and not necessarily just what's our gut reaction to, you know, some controversy that happens. Like, well, let's think through that, and what does that mean, and how can we respond in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, maybe that's sort of a good sort of overarching just principle. Just first thing, if you see headlines, you see the controversy, this is like take a deep breath, like step outside, go for a walk, think on it.
Yeah.
Maybe your gut reaction's still right, and it's just horrible, and we need to be outraged. But like most of the time, it's like if we just sort of take a moment, like a pause, we can process this and like engage in a more like healthy, constructive way beyond just like here's another thing we're mad at, and then now we move on to the next thing, and then and then we forget about the fact that Christians are like all mad about turning red or all these things that happened, the old controversies, and it's always under the news to sort of think about it. But hey, this has been fun. This has been, I think it's good just to kind of think about kind of culture and kind of be less tied down to just like this happened, so we got to talk about this. And like, I enjoy doing that too, but I do think it's good, kind of like we've been saying, just to sort of look at culture as a whole. Kind of think, okay, what's going on? What are we excited about? What's kind of happening? Do we have any kind of final thoughts from our behind the table, the magic makers of?
Not besides have fun next week. You'll be in the beach.
Yeah, we'll be. We had a vacation all planned, and then we realized that it was booked for next year. Surprise! So we pivoted. We'll be. So as you guys are watching this, we're at St. Simon's Island, and hopefully having good weather and enjoying ourselves and coming back refreshed for this. But yeah, hope you guys. Stephen got his vacation out of the way. Joni, you leave. I guess you'll be. By the time this thing airs, you'll already be there and riding the rides and stuff. So we hope you have fun with your vacation. And we hope you guys will join us again next week. We should be live again, kind of more a traditional, typical live stream, kind of going through conversations and topics and whatever nonsense Sam decides to bring for his host corner. So hey,
it'll be great.
We have a couple extra weeks to prep emotionally and mentally for that. But thanks for joining us, guys. If you haven't done so, could you guys subscribe to our channel, like our page, wherever you're joining us from, subscribe to the podcast, however you get your fix of the Collision Live, and just sort of join with what we're doing here at the Collision, have these conversations. We'd love to have you be a part of that. But stay safe, guys, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.